Today I'm going to show you how to make a hand drill friction fire set using materials from British woodlands. I'm going to start by having a walk around and looking for two of the most common materials we use, and that is elder spindles and clematis hearths. Fantastic, I found an elder tree but we've got a problem. It's mostly in the water. You can tell it's elder because the bark has these warts on it and opposite leaves, and elder has these long straight branches growing up. It's more of a shrub than a tree, and what I'm looking for is individual straight shoots, no curves in them, as straight as possible for a spindle. A lot of this is old and rotten, see there's nothing in there. I found this shoot going right up, and it looks thick here but it thins out at the top here, so what we'll do is we'll cut it off and have a look and see if it's any good. This is a bit of cut off. It's quite long if you look at it, but what I'm looking to do is to trim it down to an ideal length. So first I'm having a look at the thickness of the inner bark. I'll show you. So can you see here the pithy core and then the bark here? It looks fairly decent sized thickness. Any thinner and it'll just crumble, and when you go to spindle it'll just collapse. So the thickness here looks pretty good. There's a small kink in it there. Now I'll have a look at the other end now. And I'll cut it open to see how thick it is on the other end and whether it's usable. I've looked at the other end now. That's way too green and way too thin. That's no good. It just won't really dry very well. So I'll cut it back and I'll see if there's anything a bit thicker and a bit more seasoned. I'll show you how thin it is. So that stick wasn't any good, so I've gone back and had a look at a few more. If you can see this one, look how small the pith is. That's much better because you've got the bark there which will give it strength, and that'll be what will be used to make the friction fire. So that's so much better, and it's worth spending time to have a look around and see and try out different spindles. You want to get the right one first time ideally. There's no point spending all the time seasoning it, preparing it and testing it if it's bad from the start. And that's the other end, which is a bit thicker and a bit more seasoned too. So here's the final spindle size that I've got. You can roughly gauge how big it is. From chest and a little bit longer than the fingertips there. There's a lot of debate that when you're hand drilling, whether you hand drill with a small tip going downwards, whether you have the thicker end. The thicker end of course is the base which is attached to the tree. Now looking at this one, the base which was attached to the tree is a lot thicker in the wood, so I'd rather drill into it like that way than on the thin end, because the thin end has a very thin bit of wood, and hopefully that'll make a bit of sense to you. So what I'll just do is trim up the end a little bit, and that helps it when it's in a socket. So just removing the outer bark. Some people remove all of the outer bark, but I find that if your hands start to sweat, they slip up and down the bark too easily, so I like to keep the bark on. Now the difficulty with this is that it takes longer to season and dry out. So if you remove the bark immediately, then it can dry out in good weather within a couple of days, but leave the bark on, it takes a bit longer. So I've just exposed the tip basically. And there's the spindle, and we'll go looking for the hearth board now. As I'm walking around the woods, I'm looking out for the telltale signs of clematis, which is a vine, almost vine-like, growing up alongside the trees. and they can be quite difficult to spot. I've found elder way more abundant than clematis. You have to go and find it in old woodlands, so check around on maps and have a good look around. Well, I've had success. I found this massive bit of clematis, which is much bigger than I usually find. The thing is, this big stuff is no good for the hearth board. It's way too big. So what I do with this is I chase it up to a much thinner part, which I can take off. So I found a fantastic bit of clematis, and it looks quite straight as well. This is pretty good thickness too. It's already lost the spot end and it feels really light, so this might already be seasoned. We might be able to use it immediately. So what I'll do is I'll trim up some of it. I like to trim my clematis to about this length and see how straight it is. That's the beginning of the board. Now if you get it green, you've got to leave the outer bark on and let it dry for possibly a few months or at least several weeks. If you take the bark off, it splits really badly and is no longer good. But this bit's already dry, so I can get into it and shape out the hearth board. And here's a closer up view so you can see exactly what's happening. There's a little bit of rot there, but I can work around it and I'll trim it out. I'll try and cut it out that way. And you can see how fibrous the outer bark is. Trying to cut some of this rot out. And you can use a lot of the outer bark for tinder as well, so collect it as you go. You just want to make flat sides to begin with. Make it a rectangular shape. So now I've trimmed the hearth board up. I haven't done all of it because that takes a lot more time and I don't necessarily need it. But if you do it, it'll make it flatter and more stable when you're spinning. But I think I can get away with it. So you can see I've just flattened the edges and thinned them out, and that'll give you a rough idea of thickness. The hearth board has to be a lot thinner than normal bow drill. It's a bit long and thick around here and I might trim that up. You can see it's about a fingernail there, and that's the rot that's running through there. So I'll try and burn in here now. So I'll make a little depression in here, then work the spindle just to build the socket up. So we'll make a depression in the socket. So we're making a depression here, which is the start of the socket. I don't do it too close to the edge because when you cut the notch it can break off. So I'll do it here and in the middle, so it gives me plenty of room for manoeuvre. Let's make a little depression like that. So the spindle tip can fit in there and begin spinning. So here's a good indication of how the set's going to work, and it's good to pay attention to the feedback that the spindle gives you in the hearth board. So let's see what happens to start with. So I've got my little socket there, which isn't charged yet, and here's the spindle. I'm just going to warm it up and bed it in. Have fun, spit a bit on the hands. Put the foot on the hearth board. And all you do is a standard pass-through method, which is push your hands along. see the socket's burned in now, and we're going to cut a V-notch just in there. So here's my V-shaped notch. If you notice, I haven't cut it right to the centre. If you cut it to the centre, you can get nippling on the spindle, which staggers the ember making process. You might want to notice that I've also flared it out at the bottom there, so you can get a nice coal in there and more dust. So let's get spinning. For the tinder bundle, I've got dried grass, some shavings from the clematis, and some dried fungus as well. This is Ganoderma applanatum, which is artist conch. It dries, and that just adds as a coal extender, giving me more chance of blowing it to flame. So I'm just about ready to begin. Here's the hearth board. Then I've got a pan here to catch the ember, and that is the artist conch plus a bit of birch polypore, which will smoulder when it catches. And I've got the tinder bundle underneath. Looks like we're with a coal already. Just let it coalesce for a bit. You can see that the coal I've made using the dust from the elder spindle will catch onto the pans, the fungus pans, and they'll start coaling as well. Now that it's been giving time to coalesce, it's sticking together, and we can just tap it out gently. There we go. Now I'll just move the camera back a sec. Now it's time to blow it to flame. And there's your flame. And that's how you do the hand drill. If you've got any questions or comments, please put them below. Like and share the video, spread it out as far as we can, because I believe that everyone should have this skill in bushcraft. It's not a weird, wonderful technique, it just takes practice and perseverance. I'll quite happily help you along with that. Thanks for watching.